So I'm going to talk about multi-site, multi-level evaluations. I've had the opportunity to do lots of these kinds of evaluations through my work with NSF. So I've worked with NSF since I got my PhD in 1974. So I've been doing evaluations for a long time. So I have lots of examples. I can answer lots of questions if you have based on practical examples. When I was preparing the slides for this, I wasn't exactly sure what to do, and I made up these slides and I sent them around, and nobody gave me any changes, so I kept them. But I'm hoping that maybe I'll kind of go fast and we can do questions at the end. I've actually embedded a chance for questions in the middle. Do we have time to still do that?
Yes.
And how do I make this go forward?
Easiest way.
This? No. This?
Keys will do it.
Hooray. Technologically challenged always. So this is what we're going to do today in my little part of the talk. A lot of it, what would we say, is reinforcement of some of the things that you either got in 101 or in the presentations this morning. So I'll try to go through those kind of quickly. So these are my definitions of evaluation that I've gotten from other people, not that I made up. Evaluation is determining merit or worth. That's a Michael Scriven definition of evaluation. And the other one, which is really my favorite, this is a Dan Stuffelbeam definition of evaluation. And as I was saying in my group, breakout group, when I began being an evaluator, I thought that the most important thing was this obtaining, doing the methodology thing, really being a good statistician, a good qualitative researcher. And later I found out that really the most important thing is this delineation, which is what we were doing earlier, this theory of change, or logic modeling, or whatever you want to call it. It's making sure that the people that you're doing the evaluation for know what it is that they're doing, and that you're going to evaluate what that is. If you don't know what it is, you can't evaluate it. So the delineation phase of evaluation, I think, is really critical, and I don't think it gets as much attention as it needs to have. When we do these I think the logic modeling and theory of change work has really helped to highlight that more recently than me. So I think that's a very good, helpful thing. What it doesn't do is tell you what to do then with your evaluation. So once you get this lovely theory of change for the program or the project, depending on what word you want to use, then you as the evaluator still have to develop your evaluation plans. This theory of change stuff is really related to the program people, your clients, what they want to do and how they see it. So in addition to evaluation, there's lots of other terms. People use evaluation interchangeably with a lot of things. Monitoring is a common kind of, keeping track of who comes when, how many participants do you have. Often that's called monitoring. NSF has a large number of monitoring systems where they have the different projects put in all the different things that they do so they can aggregate the data. Performance assessment is often thought of as using existing data. Some of these, you have administrative data sets that you're using to do that. And then we've talked some already about the differences between research and evaluation. And these are just some three things that I think are kind of help talk about it. Although as I pointed out in my breakout, I think that the terms are a lot in the gray area. There's some things that are clearly evaluation. There are some things that are clearly research. And there's a lot of stuff that's in the middle, especially if you're using large multi-site program evaluation, because it's getting real close to research, right? When you're trying to figure out an evaluation of the food stamp program. That sounds to me like research about how effective the food stamps program is. It's the evaluation of the food stamp program, but it is also research about the food stamp program. So I think there's room there for that. I think that the main difference is how you're using it. So you're out there if you're going to use it to improve your program and fix something like that, or make statements about your program in a narrower way, then it's probably evaluation. If it's something that you want to speak to the whole field about, as was mentioned in several of the other things, then it becomes more like research. So there are lots of reasons why you might evaluate programs, and I just have a couple slides in these, so I thought I'd put them out there. You might want to optimize and justify the program. You might want to judge the quality of the program, see how it operates, see how its procedures work, kind of more process evaluation. Stuffelbeam, whose definition I like, had this old evaluation model called the SIP model, context, input, process, and product, which is a nice way to divide the universe into these are things that are contextual. These are things that you do evaluations about what's the best way to do something. Then you do process stuff where this is how I'm doing it. Am I doing it right or am I doing it well? And the product is, I produce this. Is this any good? So he's got these 4 ways to divide the universe. Most evaluation models have different ways to divide the universe. They all seem good to me. I don't think that there's one right way. You should try to use the one that works best for you, sometimes best for the particular program. The systems approaches, engineers are keen on systems approaches. It's good to speak systems language to engineers. So depending on who you're working with and what they hear and what they know, then you can judge some of those things. And then, of course, the quality of the outcomes, participants, students, others, all of those different kinds of things. And if we take each of those and kind of look at the quality of the program, these are just some sample questions that you might want to use if you were evaluating the quality of the program. Are they doing what they said they were going to do? That is not the only way to judge the quality of a program, right? All these other questions are equally relevant, depending on what you and your people, your clients, decide. I don't think that there's a one right answer, one way to do it, this is the way you have to do it, because every situation is different, and since this is a value judgment, that's one of the reasons why it's different from research. Research is kind of this universal truth. Evaluation is about valuing. What do your clients want? What do you think is important? What might be the social good? It depends on that. It's a dependent kind of activity. So it's important to do that. So all of these questions are good questions that you might want to use as you're going forward. Quality of outcomes, these are more common. People tend to focus on that, especially lately, the accountability, and everybody's all keen on what did we do really, impact kind of stuff. These are all kinds of things that you can look at in terms of outcomes. Have others benefit, comparative kinds of things. This is where it gets a little closer to research, right? That kind of an idea. These are some different strategies. I wasn't sure how much of a tutorial this was supposed to be. So these are all different. So in terms of the delivery of the program, direct recipients, effects on secondary units, other effects, these are all different techniques. So methods or methodological approaches that you can take to measure some of those things as the evaluator. So if you were an evaluator and you wanted to look at the delivery of program, you could do observations, you could do participant observer, you could do participant opinion, you could do pre-post testing, any number of things like that that you could do to try to answer some questions about the program delivery. The effects on direct participants would be, you might do discourse analysis, phenomenological studies. I'm a mixed methodologist, so I guess that kind of means I know nothing about a lot of things. But so I know enough to know that I need to get help sometimes. I mean, I have conducted phenomenological studies. I think if I were going to do one, I might want to get a true phenomenologist so they could explain to me the difference between a Gadamerian phenomenological study versus somebody else's kind of, so there's lots of theories within phenomenology. And you want to, if you're going to do it, you want to do it right? Just like I would go get help if I had to do advanced propensity score matching within an HLM. You know, I can do that. I mean, at least I can read it and get the output. But if I wanted to do it for sure, I'd get somebody who really does that for a living. I don't do that for a living. I translate for a living. That's what evaluators do. So you have to know what you know and what you don't know in order to try to do some of these things. I think phenomenological studies can be really useful, like the children that was mentioned this morning. If you did a phenomenological study of a child in one of those programs, you would find out that they weren't having fun. That might not be the most efficient way to find out they weren't having fun. You could probably do that with a quick look in the door, right? Yeah, these kids are not happy. So, you know, you want to try to match your stuff to the amount of money you have and the kind of question that you have when you're doing it. Opinions, ethnographies, achievement studies, and of course all of these require different instrument development. I think as evaluators, you really should have and understand a lot of measurement theory because you make up instruments all the time, right? I mean, especially surveys. But any kinds of instruments. You want to scale it? Do you want to do this? How valid are these? What's the construct that I'm underlying this? What kind of IRT stuff do I want to do with these tests? To really develop a strong instrument, you have to know a lot. You have to do a lot with it. So you want to make sure you're not overstepping the bounds of how valid the stuff is that I'm using. If you just make up a survey, I mean, even if you made up a good one and the questions were good, you didn't do talk-alouds. Well, you know, that's probably, how do you know that the kids are going to understand those things as well as you understand those things? one of my classic examples is we were doing this survey, national survey, and we were trying to do the right thing, Anyway, and we did lots of talk alouds, and it was a survey for children in, middle school. And the question was trying to figure out what their teachers did in their classrooms, right? So we were in Minnesota, and we had all these kids saying, well, what do you think about this item? And we asked them if their teachers lectured a lot during class. So that was okay, went over everything, everybody understood. We shipped it down to Alabama, and the kids said, no, my teacher never yells at me. So, completely different, completely different understanding of the term lecture, right? So you want to make sure that you do your talk alouds with the people you're going to give the instrument to, not just a convenience sample. So, it's a classic example of, we tried to do the right thing, but we didn't do it well enough. And there's a lot of emphasis lately on, you can't see it very well because Minnesota M is in the way, networking studies, social network analysis. There have been a lot of advances in the kind of quantitative work that you can do with networking. So I think that's a nice arena to work in. One of the difficulties is you kind of have to know everybody that's in your network to start with, or you have these really open-ended networks, which are very difficult to deal with, every new people every time. So it's kind of difficult to do that. All right, so I'm supposed to be speaking about multi-site settings. So some of the real differences in multi-site settings is how the projects vary. So sometimes, if you're doing medical studies, oftentimes they don't. You have different sites, but they're identical. And they are really, really concerned about treatment validity, right? You're not going to give these drugs to somebody and not do it right. So those are different kinds of studies than, I think, what we're talking about here. We're talking more about, in my estimation, like a program. So I did an evaluation of the Collaboratives for Excellence in Teacher Preparation for NSF. So there were lots of collaboratives across the nation, and I was looking at them. As you can imagine, each collaborative had their own plan, their own grants. They all had several institutions that were involved. So it was a huge, I don't want to say mess, but lots of levels and lots of people, and we were getting down to students in the very classrooms, but then there were these 4 institutions, and that was only one collaborative. So, how you did all that together. So there's lots of differences in the project, so you have, or sites, whatever you want to call them. So you have to make sure that your evaluation plan takes that into account. How am I going to deal with these different levels of interaction, different ideas, different settings, different contexts, that kind of thing. Geographically diverse is also a problem. The cost of getting to places like I didn't go to Alabama and talk to the children about what does lecture mean, because I could just talk to the kids across the street. So the cost and time and effort that you have involved in that. So when you're doing a program, you all have multiple stakeholders, and the project itself often becomes a key stakeholder. So when we're doing the stakeholder breakout later, the alliance, we were talking in my group, and we were talking about an alliance, and the alliance has different clusters. So each of those clusters could be considered a site, right? So you have those, that's a stakeholder. This site itself is a stakeholder, as well as the parents and the kids and the instructors and everybody else. So you have these superimposed or super hierarchical ideas about what is a stakeholder. It could be a unit as opposed to just an individual, right? And then there's also power differentials. So if you're doing a consortial arrangement of some sort and you've got a little tiny school and you've got a huge school, what do you do to make sure that those power differentials are cared for carefully, that this voice isn't lost in this loud one? So you have to, as an evaluator, you have to consider all of those things in your multi-site settings. So this is the embedded activity. So my idea was you could just think about challenges in your evaluations, hopefully multi-site evaluation challenges, but I'll take any kind of challenge. And after you think for a little bit, then I thought you'd maybe do groups of 4. I wasn't sure what the venue was going to be like, so you can maybe split, like you can 3 and you can 4, just kind of grab somebody next to you. And talk a little bit about those challenges, and then I'll just kind of select groups and we can share challenges and talk about how that challenge might be solved. I thought that would be an interesting activity. Okay, so think for a minute about challenges in evaluation, particularly multi-site evaluations, but that we can talk about. So I'm going to ask a few groups to just tell me what their challenges were and stuff. So why don't we?
Volunteer.
Yeah, somebody wants to volunteer, or otherwise I'll pick you. There we go. Good, a volunteer group.
Back here.
That's so much nicer.
So two issues that I can think of are communication and then also shared objectives, because you know, they might have their own program with a different evaluation, my program with my own evaluation. We have different objectives, but we're heading in the same direction. But I can see difficulties in coming to shared agreement around objectives
Right.
at a multi-site.
Right. No, good. So I will tell you that in my slides coming up, I think one of the issues that helps with that is developmental evaluation. Michael Patton was mentioned earlier today too, where it's more, the evaluation is more focused on principles. You know, like are we reaching underrepresented groups? Who cares about how? Right. Kind of a thing. You know, exactly. So that gives you the freedom. I think as an evaluator, I always did that. I mean, the program changed. Well, of course you changed what you did. But people who are used to like medical evaluations, you don't change anything. You know, or if you're doing pre-post or you have baseline and you have, you know, I mean, this is the same instrument, despite the fact the program is completely different. So, you know, you really have to use more of the developmental. I think that's what I think was really good about Michael doing that. He's from Minnesota, so I know him. Well, Michael doing that is that it allowed you to do it as soon as you got a label for it. Oh, I'm doing a developmental evaluation. That's okay, but you just changing your evaluation plan. No, that's bad. You know, so it's good. And I think that helps a lot. Did you guys have one? A challenge? No, yes? You didn't volunteer. He just handed you the microphone.
Can I say, so, clue, right? So I think like you were talking about differences in implementation of say, a certain assignment. So
Let's get her to talk. I got it.
So with the LEARN program, a consortium of schools, and we have a high impact project that our students participate in called the research proposal.
Okay.
And what I've found in the implementation of this project so far is that the three schools are really taking on a different pedagogical perspective for each. So I come from a very intensive pedagogical background, time in the classroom in public schools, developing critical thinking skills. And so I'm looking at the implementation of the project in that way. And we're trying to standardize it across all three schools, where the other PIs on the project who are teaching this project, it's almost like they don't know how much they know. And so they have different expectations on how to walk the students through this project. And then at the end, we're supposed to send these samples, these student work samples, out to an external evaluator to see if there has been growth in critical thinking skills. So
that would be a problem.
It's been a challenge so far, and with the use of rubrics that I don't know if they communicate well with the students. So I'm personally concerned about how we can use this as an evaluation tool.
So
is it that you,
go ahead.
is it that
Mike.
Is it that you're worried about your work kind of being drowned out by work that you might not necessarily think holds up to the same set of standards? So like you could imagine, right, at multi-site, some sites are doing a great job, some sites are not doing a great job, and over on the average it looks worse than it like.
So I don't know if I'm concerned that I'm not doing it right. I'm coming from my classic teaching background about how to implement a project and scaffold students through that project. And I don't necessarily know if the PIs at the other school look at it in that same way. So when I told them, you know, I've brought in writing mentors for our students to help them develop those critical thinking and writing skills that we want to be able to measure, the other schools have said, oh, well, we just recommend that they go to the writing center. So my concern is, have I overstepped myself?
Well, that's a good question. Excellent.
Well, I think they do. They hired me.
Well, I think.
I'm sorry?
So if he's going to, you have to have the thingy bob.
I didn't even mean to speak up. It just came out. I am so sorry, y'all.
The issue is when you get these multi-scales, sometimes there's always a big school in the room. And I don't know if I trust you well enough to give you
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely.
Because all you're going to do, I'm being facetious.
No, I
You're just
get
going to use this data with our students to write a bigger proposal for your school.
Yep.
I've been
Yeah. No, I think the notion of trust is very strong, and if you're concerned about whether or not they're gathering the information that's going to be the same, then you really have to have that communication beforehand. You know, we all have to meet, we have to agree that this is what, so we're going to collect student work, right? These are the elements of student work. You have to make sure that the kids know that, grown-ups, have to know that they're going to do that. You know, so the outcomes that are going to be measured need to be known by everybody. Right. And they all have to agree that those are the outcomes that they want measured. I mean, I've done multi-site ones where, you know, they could give a rip. I'm not doing that. I don't care that that's the right way to teach. We're doing it this way. You know, so it raises a lot of issues about control and power.
So there was, I think, a comeback on this over there, and then we'll come over.
I think piggybacking off of sort of the big institution, small institution comment, actually, we talked a little bit about how we were on sort of the two sides of the actual grant writing process. And us coming from a small institution that knows nothing about program evaluation and where to find these resources and how to pay for these resources before you get the grant and all of these sort of structural challenges. And the flip side of being at a big university where you're trying to convince the people writing the grants that they actually need this evaluation piece and that it provides something valuable. And sort of how do you break down these barriers of communication? And then Lou sort of added the comment of like, this is possibly a similar challenge to multi-site things in general, that maybe, you know, if we're piggybacking off of someone bigger providing us evaluation, we need ways of communicating with each other and sort of being able to work at those multiple scales.
Right.
So,
Right. No, that's a
Appreciated
great
that.
comment. I don't have anything to add to that. You wanted to?
Well, we were discussing the fact that, and you said relationship. The key, I believe, the challenge is everyone on the same page, and you don't have to do the same thing, but is everyone that's working on this problem trying to reach the same outcome? And they're just like all of us have a different life journey, and end up, you know. Most of us have a degree in here, a college degree. We didn't all get there the same way.
Right.
So I think whenever you're dealing with people and you're trying to get them to, you're trying to reach a specific objective, then you have to communicate.
Yep.
It's a relationship. You know, it's not just we got this grant, but it's a relationship, and there has to be full disclosure. And there has to be trust. And so, yes, and credit given, you know, but you also have to understand that everybody's going to they might reach that outcome in a different way.
Right. Right. No, that's a great comment. I think, you know, and we're going to do another. Oh, okay. I was going to go on. Okay. We can do one more. So, what was I going to say? I think oftentimes out of school science for organizations or people that have more underrepresented groups as part of their nonprofits often feel used. You know, I mean, oh, I just need your name for the grant. Thanks, bye. You know, that was great. Good, good. Yeah, see, I'm going to collaborate with this person. Got it. So you as an evaluator have to kind of watch. That probably isn't a true partnership. So yeah, well, we're hurrying. I'm hurrying. So one of the things that all of this kind of gelled for me in is how to get all of your sites involved. And I think the more involved, it's the trust issue, it's all of that kind of stuff. And I think if the involvement affects everything. It affects the quality of the data, what data would affect, how to collect it, how valid the data are once you get it. The monitoring systems that NSF has, you can sit down and fill them out any way you want it. No, I mean, no offense. Oh, NSF people. But, you know, I mean, how many kids did I have in my program? Well, there were 20. You know, and unless they're going to ask you about this stuff, you know, or, you know, I don't think you lie, but you don't have the time to go out and get all the information. And you kind of, well, yeah, I think that's close enough. So it's not as valid as it could be, I think, is a better way to think about it. So I have some things that are related to involvement that I thought I'd talk about. And I'm going to go through them fairly fast, but if we have questions, then we can go back over them. How's that? So there are a lot of models that are related to, evaluation models that are related to involvement, meaning everybody being involved in the evaluation. So participatory evaluation is one of the first ones. And there's kind of different definitions of it. There's lots of different people who have ideas about it. But it's in general that everybody is involved in the decision-making process and in control. So it's kind of this equalization of power, reallocating, as Cousins Whitmore say, reallocating power in the production of knowledge. So that's one thing you can keep in mind if you're doing multi-site evaluation. These are some of the characteristics of participatory evaluation: the control of the process, stakeholder selection, and depth of participation. And I have a nice little matrix I'm going to show you in a minute that actually speaks to those as well. Another one that's fairly new, Jennifer Green at Illinois did this. She's a friend of mine as well. So it's educative values engaged evaluation. And she developed it through a prime grant from NSF. And it was really designed to have evaluation, the quality, how you define quality. Now, remember, evaluation is all about merit and worth and quality of stuff. Quality is the intersection of STEM, pedagogy, and diversity. So this model centers on diversity. So I think for an Includes project, it's a good model. She puts diversity front and center. It's a very democratically underlined model. The other one that's easily related to this, related to Includes, is culturally responsive evaluation. There's lots of people who write about culturally responsive evaluation. Methodologically, culturally, and contextually defensible policymaking. So it really emphasizes the culture and the responsiveness of the program to the culture, not vice versa. You know, so if you're Jennifer Green, she was evaluating some REU, research experience for undergraduate programs. And, you know, they had diversity in the program. Who were those children? They were the daughters and sons of faculty members. You know, I mean, do they need research experiences? No. They can go to daddy's lab. I mean, come on, give me a break. So, you know, but they're the ones that they had. So they were, you know, they're filling out all their stuff. Yep, I've got 14, you know, black women in this program. Of course, they're all children of the faculty members here, but they didn't, you know. Anyway, this culturally responsive evaluation and Jennifer's values engaged really puts that question there. And Jennifer, I don't know if you know her or not, but she can be quite confrontational about things that she believes in, and she believes in this. So she would talk to the PIs about the program and say, what are you thinking? You know, what is going on here? Your whole goal is to increase underrepresented groups. You're not paying attention to that goal in the way you should. So, and then there's developmental evaluation, which I mentioned already. So we can kind of just go through that. This is those three different areas about control in terms of participation, and you can be on any of those continua to do that. And I think that helps you see how involved somebody could be. And I think that it helps you think in your head as the evaluator, who do I really want to have? If you're really doing just utilization focused, you may only want the primary users. They're the ones making the decisions anyway. You know, but if you really want, it's kind of this immersive grassroots kind of thing, you would want all the groups involved. So there's not like one way is great and the other way is bad. It's all related to what it is that you're trying to accomplish in that program and in your evaluation. So this is kind of I actually had a grant to look at involvement and use in multi-site evaluations. And these were the things that we came up with as things that would be useful. Meetings, planning for use, and I'm going to go into these in more depth. The act of providing or collecting data will help people be involved. Perception that you're running a high quality evaluation. Convenience, practicality, and alignment of evaluation materials so that they can use it easily. I run the compliance programs at the University of Minnesota, and we say that people will be compliant as long as you make that easy for them. You know, the animal care and use program. You know, we don't have animal welfare problems if it's easy to take care of the animals. So you want to make sure you do that as an evaluator. And feeling membership in a community. So then I have 8, I think, implications for practice. So you as an evaluator, these are for you evaluator, trying to get multi-sites involved in what you're doing so that you have high quality data and participation. So you want to set reasonable expectation for project staff. These means the sites that you're out there evaluating. You want to consider different levels of involvement. Not everybody and not every site can always be involved in the same way in the evaluations. You might have one person from one of the sites that's really great at surveys, and you involve that person in helping with the survey. Somebody else might be good at this. You involve them in that. You don't have to have everybody involved in everything at the same level. You want to make sure that your sites are involved as advisors, consultants. They're not going to care what you're doing if they don't think you value their opinions. So you need to involve them, and you need to listen. It's best to have their level of involvement be at the these are my opinions level, and that you and your staff do all the work, right? You don't want them to spend their time developing a survey. You take their advice, you develop the survey. They say, check this, you check it. So you want them to be your advisors, you want to do the work. You want to make sure that you address evaluation data concerns. Everybody's always worried about how is this data going to affect me? How am I going to look in this regard? So you want to make sure that everybody knows what the data are, what you're gathering, what it means, and that everybody has the same definition, right? If you think this means this and I think it means that, of course the data are completely bad. You want to make sure that you check accuracy, and you want to consider as many different kinds of analyses and interpretations as you can. The interpretations is a great time to involve your sites. You can start doing some stuff, and it's just like a member check. If you're doing a qualitative study, you send it out to the sites. What do you think? These are my impressions. This is what I think these data are saying. And they'll say, well, no, really, you're not understanding this. This is the way it's supposed to be. Or, yeah, you're right on. That's good. So you want to make sure that this is cared for carefully, because it helps instill trust. If they think you're listening to them and you're giving them the stuff back, and they know you're high quality, that you're concerned about the data, they're going to send you good data. If they think you're not concerned about it, why should they care if you don't? So you really it's really important to do that. And then, of course, communicate. You can never communicate enough. So always. And it's surprising how much difference it is to pick up the phone sometimes. I know this is the digital age. But the phone sometimes, or if you can at all get face-to-face meetings, even just one, it's amazing how much better people know you just because they've seen you in person. Then you can do the digital thing. And digital thing with pictures, of course, is much better than just on the phone. So, the more you can do that, the better. This one was something that, maybe doesn't come up real often, but you, as the evaluator of this program or this thing, you need to work with the funder who's funded all these different sites and is funding you, or the sites are funding you, however the funding streams work, so that they know what's going on. You want to represent the projects back to them, so it's not a surprise to the funder about what's going on. And the funder can help support you. So if NSF thinks I'm doing a good job and they want this evaluation done, the projects are going to be much more interested in doing it, right? Because NSF is bigger than me, just evaluator. They're important. So you will do what they want. So it's good to do this, and it's good to make sure that you connect with the funder so that the data that you're getting for them is the appropriate data. And if it's not, you need to go back to the sites and say, well, gee, I just talked to NSF, and this doesn't seem like what they're interested in. What should we do? How can we change? Or should we send my evaluator back to tell them, no, you're wrong. This is what we're supposed to do. That's when it helps to have a strong evaluator. You want to recognize life cycles of people in the programs. I can't tell you how often personnel change. You're working with this person, and this is it, and this is your contact, and they're gone. And there you are, lost. So you need to make sure that you have more than one contact, preferably 3, and move them around as you're getting that so that you are there. And you need to understand the politics in the places. So if you're getting information from the PI, but they have some other person on their staff that really knows what's going on, that's the person you want to talk to, or both of them, preferably. So you want to know what's going on in the project, how the project works, so that the quality of the data for your evaluation are the best they can be. And you want to expect tensions and conflict. I mean, don't go in thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. We're all going to have a big, happy party. That's not going to happen. Because everybody has their own tensions and stuff that they have to deal with. And so you have to recognize that, and recognize that everybody's got to give a little, and you're the one that has to give the most. You're the one that has to be there making sure everything works. You can't have an ego. It's them. It's all about them. So in part of this trust inclusion thing is all of these things. Build a community. The better the community is, when they can start talking to each other and saying, hey, I know you did this. Can I borrow your instrument for that? That's great. You know, you want to have a community where they can talk to each other, they can talk to you, you have lots of trust, and you've purposefully garnered that. It's not something that just happens. Community building does not happen. You need to have somebody working on it all the time. And this guide on the side part, not sage on the stage, you know, you're not supposed to just stand up and tell people what they're supposed to do. It's, what do you think? How would you do that? You know, so, okay. And so in summary, right on time too, involvement in multi-site evaluations is different from participation in single-site eval. So put your different hat on and realize, like Barbara's presentation, those are very different evaluations. So you want to know they're different. Involvement promotes higher quality evaluations and use of those evaluations. Lots of ways to foster participants' feelings of involvement, and you need to work on it. And communication with participants and funders is critical. So that's what I know. Thank you.